Well, welcome back to Through the Eyes of Survivors. Today's episode is one I've really been looking forward to because it challenges one of the most harmful myths that still surround domestic violence. The idea that abuse only happens to a certain type of person. We still hear this all the time. She's strong, she never would let that happen. Or, she's educated, she would have known better. She's successful and she didn't need to stay. And underneath all of those statements is the same dangerous belief that abuse is a character flaw and not a crime. The truth is, domestic violence does not discriminate. It doesn't care how intelligent you are, how accomplished you are, how independent you are, or how strong you appear on the outside and to the outside world. Abuse operates through manipulation and control, psychological conditioning, and it's not weakness. And when we kind of cling to those stereotypes about what a real victim looks like, we silence survivors who don't fit that narrative. We make them doubt themselves. We make them feel ashamed for being harmed. And we make it easier for abusers to hide in plain sight. So today's conversation is going to dismantle that myth honestly, compassionately, and without judgment. It's about understanding how abuse actually works, why anyone out there, and I do mean anyone, can be targeted, and why believing survivors means letting go of all these stories we've been told about how abuse happens. So, you're listening to Through the Eyes of Survivors. Welcome.
Important notice: the following content may be triggering. Viewer discretion is advised. All discussions are based on personal opinions and experiences. If you or someone you know needs help, please reach out to a local support organization.
All right, so we are back. And before we get into our topic and I introduce our great guest, I want to take a minute to, of course, plug our affiliates, our wonderful affiliates here at Break the Silence. So, of course, we want to take a quick moment to talk about something that can really empower your journey towards safety and healing. It's called Truth Finder. It's a simple tool that helps you uncover public records and background information about people you may encounter in your life. Whether you're reconnecting with someone from your past or just want to ensure the people around you are trustworthy, Truth Finder provides you with the information you need to make informed decisions. And here at Through the Eyes of Survivors, we're all about creating that safe space and giving survivors tools they need to reclaim their power. And that's why we're excited to share Truth Finder with you. It's a tool that helps you take control of your own security and peace of mind. So to try it out and support our podcast, check out the links in the description and in the comment section. And thank you for supporting our mission there. Also, Opus Clips. We're thrilled to partner with Opus Clips. If you haven't heard of that before, it's an AI-driven platform that helps us turn powerful podcasts like we're having today into short, impactful clips. From survivor stories to hard truths, Opus Clips helps to amplify our voices here at Break the Silence and spread awareness across all our platforms. So if you want to turn your content into scroll-stopping reels or shorts, try Opus Clips with the link that we're providing as well. And also, lastly, the Self-Defense Keychain Store. We're proud to partner with them. It's a store that it has, it's done by women, and they provide discreet, stylish tools for self-defense. So check them out through our affiliate program. And use the code, I believe it's Break the Silence 10. It will be in the descriptions and comments for your 10% off. So Um, that's all for the affiliates. Now we're over with. I want to introduce our guest today. So we have Fenella Jefferson. Fenella is a Kiwi living in New Zealand. I was very surprised that I think that's so cute that they call them Kiwis in New Zealand. So she's a commercial pilot and a scientist and a survivor of 3 domestic violence situations. Her story challenges everything people think about, what you think you know about how abuse happens, and to whom. And her perspective brings depth and clarity and truth to the conversation that is often way too simplified. So Fenella's life experience is proof that strength and intelligence and education success do not make someone immune to abuse, right? And that survival doesn't look us just one single particular way. So welcome, Fenella, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Tara. I really appreciate that. I'm actually in Australia. Sorry. It's
Oh,
confusing.
okay. So in Australia,
Yes, but I'm a Kiwi in Australia. So, yeah, it's a little bit like Canada and the US, Australia and
right?
New Zealand. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your life and your relationships? The background, kind of, so they can get a feel of where this started for you in your journey.
Yeah. So, my first serious relationship was when I was 18 at university. So, this was the first person I was ever intimate with. After 1 year of being together, then he started to become physically abusive when he had been drinking, so when he was drunk. I'm not making excuses for him, but he came from a background where in that particular culture, which is one of the Polynesian islands in the Pacific, he would have seen that happen with his parents because it was kind of okay back then to hit your wife. So that happened for a couple of years, and I was very young, very naive. I actually got him deported. And then when I was 41, so many, many, many years later, and now a commercial pilot, I was then in another relationship which became physically abusive, and I wouldn't want to call it emotionally abusive because it was just someone saying, I want to say stupid things because they were just ridiculous things, but they were meant to hurt. Um, but there is emotional abuse, and then they're just being nasty. So that was that situation, and I hadn't been in a relationship for quite a long time, and I knew that his mother had passed away just before we'd got together because we worked together as flying instructors in Melbourne. So I guess I made a few excuses for him. And I think this is a big part of what happened to me with the last 2 relations. I was making excuses, and maybe they were making excuses. So we were together for 3 years. Nothing, of course, happened in the first year because often it doesn't. It's when you're more ingrained in the relationship.
Right.
And he ended up moving to a different part of Australia, and things just kind of petered out. I did get a restraining order on him, so he couldn't come near me again. And at that point, I was living in a place called Darwin, and I hadn't lived there for very long. I didn't have a lot of friends. It was a bit of a difficult place to make friends because people sort of come and go. It's that sort of city. And that's where I met my now ex-husband. And that was the worst domestic violence situation in terms of if I had to compare the three. So this one was emotional abuse. So this was narcissistic type of abuse.
Mhm.
And it was way worse. It sounds silly, but way worse than physical abuse. Again, nothing happened in the first couple of years. And the situation was that it was on again, off again in terms of him seeing his children, so not my children. And I was led to believe that, of course, the ex-partner, the mother of the children, was crazy and all that type of thing. Subsequently, I'm now one of her friends. It's very interesting to actually get the real story. But I was making excuses when things started to happen 2 years in as to why they were. Oh, he's not seeing his children. He's been accused of this. He's been accused of that. That became very difficult because we ended up living overseas and COVID happened. So I was never in a position to leave because we were living in the UK, which is where he's originally from. And there was no chance to go back to Australia or New Zealand during COVID, as everybody would understand. So in that 1 year before COVID happened, I actually packed my bags about 7 times to leave, even though I did not have the money to do it. But I was kept, right, you're going to go to Heathrow. I'm going to ring my mum and say, Mum, you need to buy me a ticket. But then it never happened. And as we know, quite often takes many times before you leave a situation. Then COVID happened, so I couldn't leave. And then he became very nice to me during COVID, which I think in retrospect was because he didn't have any of the things that he liked outside of our relationship, golf, football. I now know cheating, looking at websites, dating websites. I didn't know any of that was going on. So he didn't have any of that. So I became it for him in terms of keeping him happy and boosting his ego and things like that. So things started to look good then. After COVID finished, we moved to Singapore and things got really bad, at one point physical. So I left him in Singapore. I lived in Singapore for 2 years after that, and then I moved back to Australia. But, yeah, by far that was the worst of the three. So that's my background in terms of the violence. My other background is I have a master's in science. So I was a pharmacologist, and then later in life, at the age of 31, became a commercial pilot.
Right. Definitely a diverse, interesting career there. For sure.
Yeah.
But just, off the top of my head, because sometimes this is the kind of thing that people really don't understand until you're living it. They don't understand why, when you have such opportunity and background and stuff, someone stays in the middle of that. So what would you say about that?
And I'm probably going to talk mostly to the last relationship, to be fair, because, we did get married. I think there were a few reasons I stayed, and I've thought long and hard about this over the last few weeks, but also the last 3 years, because I left him at the end of 2022. I think one of the reasons I stayed was that I'd been in a domestically abusive relationship. And the reason that I ended up in another relationship, which was about 6 months later, was because a friend of mine had said, why don't you go on a few dating websites and remind yourself there are some nice guys out there? Your ex is gone now. He's moved to Perth, so it was another state, because she knew that I was spending most of my Saturday mornings looking at stuff about domestic violence. And in her mind, because she'd also been through that years before, she thought, you need to sort of move on a little bit. So I started to do that. And the intention was never to get into a relationship, because I'm not ready to get into a relationship. I've still got a lot of healing to do. So it was really just to, go on some dates. There was nothing physical went on with any of these dates or anything. It was just having a nice dinner or a drink with a nice man. But when I met my husband-to-be, I knew I was in trouble from the moment I met him. And I say that in a good way, because I met him and thought, oh, I really like this guy. Mm-hmm. He's really nice. He's really attractive. He seems very switched on. He seems very confident. He was, personality-wise, exactly the opposite of the previous person. Mm-hmm. So I kind of got pulled into this relationship knowing that I wasn't really ready for it. But there's a part of you going, but I might miss this opportunity. This might be the man of my dreams. And soon after we started dating, I told him about what had happened to me, and he told me about what was happening for him in terms of his ex-partner letting him see the kids and not letting him see the kids, and accusing him of touching the children the wrong way, etc., etc. So we kind of became kindred spirits, because in my mind, I had gone through domestic violence and he was going through a form of it himself.
Right.
Now, I've subsequently found out that he did do those things to his children, and that's been very hard to take on board. I've only found that out in the last year. But I was led to believe that, he was the victim. So we were both victims. So I had this person that was supporting me, or so I thought. Plus, I hadn't really made any friends in that city yet. So I became quite, I hate to use this word, especially about myself, but quite needy, it felt. And I really wanted to spend time with them, etc., etc. And because nothing happened in terms of abuse in the first 18 months or so, I thought, this guy's just great. He's fantastic. Behind my back, he was cheating on me, lying to me about all sorts of things. And I guess when things started to go a little bit haywire, which was very slowly, so it's very insidious,
Mm-hmm.
I was making excuses. Oh, well, he thinks he might have depression, and, the kids have been taken away again. The ex has made something up and he can't see his children. So there was lots of excuses, but I think I don't want to necessarily call the word say excuses, because I don't think that's exactly right. It's probably more, I always want to see the good in someone.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully I still do feel that way. He will have good in them. So, I give people the benefit of the doubt, and I probably gave them too many benefits of the doubt. But yeah, I think there's lots of different streams as to why I stayed.
Yeah.
And
I had
it was
a friend.
circumstances.
I had a friend once call that rationalizing and justifying.
Oh,
So
that's
rationalize
right.
what is
Yes.
going on, and then you justify it with these actions, their background, what you did versus everything. I always thought it was good when she used that, because I had a very similar. My abusive ex was nothing happened for the first year and a half.
Yes.
And when it happened, it shocked me, just absolutely floored me. I'd never seen that side ever. I never expected it. So yeah, there was a lot of rationalizing and justifying what was happening, because you had a year and a half of this experience with somebody else.
Yes.
Yeah. I've been
and you love them, or you think you love them. So it's a really big deal to then, because I know exactly what you mean. I remember the first time something happened, and I'm like, did he just say that?
Yeah.
So you think, well, that's not his name's Gary. That's not the Gary that I know. So that can't be right. Something's happening. Something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they also rationalize it as well for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a situation where I found a text message, because he got me to charge his phone up, that said I love you to his ex-girlfriend. He managed to rationalize that to me. Oh, no, I meant that for you. Of course, I want to believe that. I want to believe that that is true. Of course I do, because I don't want to be hurt. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you believe them, because you don't want to go through the hurt of admitting what's really happening. Now, when I look back now, which is many, many years later, it's like, oh, that is so obvious that is actually what was going on. So yeah, but at the time, you're caught up. You're in the emotion of it at the time. You can't. Yeah. So yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. It's like emotional rationalization.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just to I forgot to tell our people watching, they've had the last couple of weeks, because of the holidays, of a pre-recorded live. We are not pre-recorded. We are actually live. So any questions or comments, please feel free to jump in. We'll be glad to address that as we're progressing here in the podcast. So we are fully back, everybody. Just to let you know, we're back from the holiday. But so, part of what we rationalize, I guess, is that it would never happen again, right? That we're never going to let this kind of thing happen again. And yet you have a unique spot of like you said, 3 different relationships where it happened. So can you talk about that some?
Yeah, I guess in terms of the first time, I didn't really know much about domestic violence. So yeah, that sort of I talk more to the last two. I was very young and naive. It was the first person I'd ever had sex with. It was a big deal. But with the last two, yeah, I guess with the one before my husband. When I look back at it and I think about, well, when it started to happen for the first time and he was more sort of physical and, as I said, just nasty, he'd say stupid things like, oh, when you walked past Hardy's Aviation, did you stop and suck all of their, I won't say the word, referring to the male pilots as you walk past, just stupid things. So you're like, that's ridiculous. So I don't call that emotional or psychological abuse. That's just jealousy, stupid, but it's nasty. You don't want to hear that from your partner. So I guess in terms of that, and thinking, well, I would never end up in that situation. Yeah, I probably was in that situation going, I can't be in this situation. This can't be what's happening. So you kind of downplay it a little bit in your head. And you think, well, it's not quite as bad as I think. And of course it was. And looking back, I said, that's just atrocious how I got treated. But again, I was in a situation when things got really bad where I had moved to another city. So we had both been living in Melbourne and we both moved to Darwin for different jobs separately. So, and this is the same place I lived with my husband, but he obviously came after that. I didn't know anyone in Darwin. I only knew him, et cetera, et cetera. So there's also that sort of reliance a little bit, I guess. But I guess for me, like I immediately after moving up there, and I stayed with him initially, and his flatmate, I immediately started looking for a place to live. And I was living in hotels and trying to work out where I was going to live and et cetera, et cetera. It was exactly what happened to me with my next partner as well in Singapore. So it was slowly edging my way out of that situation. That situation was, I guess it was a little bit more scary because of the physical side of it. So when it's physical, there's always that in the back of your head, he could kill me. Right. And he did once put his hands around my throat. So, that's a slightly a fair thing. But, yeah, I definitely downplayed in my head what was actually going on. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but, yeah. I think more importantly with the second one, because you think, well, I came out of that relationship and I'm older and wiser now, and I'm in my 40s with both of these relationships. When I met my to-be husband, Gary, I thought, right, I know exactly what my boundaries are. I know exactly what I won't put up with. But it was a completely different type of domestic violence. And right. I think that's the key, is that I've gone from physical and someone just being blatantly nasty to this insidious thing that was happening. And I didn't know everything that was happening behind my back, like he was putting me down to his mother and his father. His mother's an absolute narcissist as well. And so things were going on behind my back. But on the outside, he looks like this great guy. He's fabulous. He's really caring and et cetera, et cetera. But after sort of 18 months, it starts to change. But I had never experienced narcissistic type of traits in a person. Right. So I didn't understand why when he did something that hurt me, which wasn't physical, but said something, why he never apologized. So the previous person, when he would, hit me, would apologize and try to make up for it, which of course it doesn't make up for it. But it's right. That atypical domestic violence circle, whereas with my ex-husband, it was so insidious and so twisted that I could end up having an argument with him for 8 hours and
Yeah.
not understand what was going on. I'm just sitting there, and this is just before COVID, going, what is going on? I don't understand why he can't understand how doing that has hurt me and
Right.
apologize. Instead, he was doing the classic narcissistic type of thing where I can't take responsibility, I can't apologize or make up for it or whatever you want to call that.
Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, I'm going to tell you what you've done. What about when you did this day?
Now
So
the gaslighting
yeah. And
system.
I'd never heard of gaslighting. I didn't understand what narcissism was. I said, I just don't understand. I just remember someone said to me recently, what would the word be for when your relationship started to become undone? I said, complete confusion. And
Mm-hmm.
not just confusion as to why it was falling apart, but why is he doing that? Why does he act that way? Why does he think that's okay? So, yeah, I think
Yeah, and you
it's
have a
very
tendency as an intelligent person, which most of us
yes,
consider ourselves intelligent, and you think you're with this intelligent person yourselves, that you
correct.
that you can have this conversation and make them see the intelligence of your point of view, and
Yes.
it's nothing about that at all.
No,
It does not
no.
enter the equation whatsoever. And if you think in logical terms, which I tend to do that a lot, like I got in my head, if I can just make you see the logic of it,
Correct, Tara.
if then and he can be logical, so if they just see it, they'll see what I'm trying to say, and it's just it's nothing about that. It's about the control that they're looking to
Yes.
create in the words they're
Yes.
saying. So, and it's very insidious. Uh,
Oh,
that's the word I
absolutely.
use for it all the time
Yeah,
because
it
they
totally is.
know how they're manipulating. They know what they're doing. They
Yes.
know the creating the confusion in your brain so they can control you more. And it's never their fault.
Oh no, never their fault. And you're the controlling one. There's always this projection, constant projection. Like
Mhm.
he got to a point where he was calling me Hitler in public in Singapore, which
Ooh,
is definitely not the country to be doing that. Um, so it just gets more and more extreme. So I'm a very strong individual, and he has openly admitted that's why he was attracted to me. He was
mhm.
attracted to me because I was strong. He was attracted to me because he liked to tell people I'm a pilot because it's more of a male dominated field. So he thought that was pretty
Mhm.
cool. Um, so there was all these things. So that those types of people are definitely attracted to strong people because they need them to boost their ego, make them feel good, make them look good. But
Yes.
then when things start to disintegrate because they've done so many things that have hurt you and never made up for it, so there's just this big mountain of hurt, then things start to disintegrate intimately and everything. You're not as into them, so you're not boosting their ego like they require anymore because you're losing love for them. And I would say that one day I'm going to wake up and I just won't love you anymore. I'll be gone.
Mhm.
And that's exactly kind of what did happen to a degree. But I think it's if they can't control you, and I never realized it was all about control until a year after I left. Well, it actually was about control, wasn't it? They
Mhm.
can't control you, which he never could. Um, then they get worse and worse and worse because I get thinking, why have we gone from, why why do you make me wash the dishes to Hitler?
Right.
Like there was this big jump in terms of nastiness about these things that he called control from my side. And I think it's just they have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing because he couldn't get the control that he wanted.
Hmm. No, that's a typical tactic for sure.
Yeah.
We've kind of come to the midpoint. We're going to take a mid break here, and please stay with us. We're going to just play a quick video on here at Break the Silence. We're looking for volunteers. Definitely want to take a moment to show some appreciation to our volunteers who make all this work possible. We're powered by people who care enough to show up and people who believe survivors deserve to be heard and supported, protected, not dismissed and blamed. So if volunteering seems like something you would like to do, we would love to have you. We'll put some links in and play the video on our volunteering here at Break the Silence.
At BTSADV, every survivor deserves to feel seen, supported, and safe. But we can't do this work alone. When you volunteer with BTSADV, you're not just giving your time, you're giving hope. Hope to survivors rebuilding their lives. Hope to children who've lost a parent to domestic violence. Hope to families healing after trauma. We have volunteer opportunities for every skill set. Support line volunteers who answer calls with compassion. Graphics creators who build our educational posts and campaigns. Editors who turn podcasts into powerful short-form videos. Social engagement volunteers who help keep our pages safe. Podcast moderators who guide conversation and protect survivors live. Website editors who help publish survivor stories and resources. And video reel creators who bring awareness to millions. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need special degrees. You just need a willingness to show up with courage and empathy. We train you. We support you. We walk with you every step of the way. If you've ever wanted to make a difference, if you've ever said, "I wish I could help," this is your moment. Join our volunteer team. Stand with survivors. Be part of something life-changing. BTSADV, where survivors find connection, support, and hope. At BTSADV, every...
And we're back. So if you ever thought about getting involved, now's definitely the time. We need volunteers across all our different areas that you heard about. So if you want more information or want to apply, please check out the notes and the comments and the descriptions, and we'd love to have you be part of the team. So, all right. So we're back to our discussion here with Fenella. So I think we were talking about some of the narcissistic traits and everything, but I'd love to know like how your identity, like at a professional level, how was that affected? When you were within these relationships, and then since then.
Yeah, I guess my first relationship, I was at university, so I met him in my first year at university, and I did fail a year because of that. So it took me 4 years to get my undergraduate degree, but it actually made me really determined to do more than that because of that. So that's why I did my master's degree. So it's like, right, I'm gonna do something even better. That was after he was deported. And with the other two relationships, I guess with the second one, it did have some implications around me having to think really hard about, was I being safe? Because I was working as a flying instructor in Melbourne at that time when it first started to happen. And I had to, when I look back at that, I think, no, I was safe. That was fine. And I teach human factors in aviation. So I guess that was a good thing because I had it in the back of my mind, if something really bad happens, I won't probably go to work that day because obviously aviation safety is incredibly important. But I guess when I look back at it, I think, wow, I can see myself like hiding it from people at work. Mm-hmm. So he had, you had at that point used to work for the same organization but moved to a different organization, and I can see myself hiding it. And a lot of people have said to me since, we knew something wasn't right. So I think we think that we hide this well, but people do pick up on something's not quite right. And I think as females, we're very good at picking up on that, because as much as I wasn't a fan of the owner, who was female, she kept taking me out for lunch all the time. And I kept thinking, why does she keep taking me out for lunch? And I've never had the opportunity to ask her, and I will one day, why did you keep taking me out for lunch? But I think we already know what she would say. You know, like, I knew something wasn't right, you know, because she was his boss at one time too, so she knew him. With the last relationship with my husband, it didn't affect my job so much when we were living in Darwin, but when things got really, really bad, which was in the UK, I was kind of thankful, and this is going to sound very strange, kind of thankful that COVID happened, because COVID meant that I couldn't fly as a pilot, and I don't think I would have been safe flying as a pilot. So I was working in aviation recruitment throughout that time. So whether I like it or not, and I thought about this the other day, COVID had a huge implication on my career as a pilot, but so did he. And I can even remember a time, because in the UK we had lockdowns, and then you could do what you like, and then we had another lockdown. It wasn't as strict as what people think. So in that time, I would sometimes go flying just in a small plane with an instructor, because I hadn't converted my license to their license. But I could go flying with an instructor, and this instructor that I used to go was one of my ex-students. He'd come and trained in Australia and converted to the European license as it was then. And so I did that 3 or 4 times, and there was one time. So, it was very exciting for me, because I hadn't flown for a year or so. There was one time where he made my life so difficult in terms of, you're taking up all the bed and being, quite nasty, and that I had to go and sleep in the lounge, and I had to sleep on the floor because the couch wasn't big enough. And so I had to text my instructor D and say, I can't come, because I knew that I couldn't come with 2 hours sleep. And there was nothing ever said about that. He didn't care that had happened. So yeah, he did have some effect on that. When I came back to Australia at the end of last year, I thought, right, am I going to go back into full-time flying? I didn't fly in Singapore either. I was still in recruitment in Singapore. And I sort of thought, well, I might need to give myself a bit more time, because I did end up on anxiety medication, which is fine. I can fly on anxiety medication. However, I recently tried to come off the anxiety medication. I thought, I'll try and come off before I go for my my aviation medical, because I know that's better. And I had more panic attacks. So it's still there. It's still affecting me in that way. So I have gone back on the medication and going through the process with the Civil Aviation Authority at the moment. And I will be signed off. It's no problem. But, I guess domestic violence can be around, or you can experience for, say, a couple of years, but it does affect on you for the rest of your life. And you've got to just learn to manage that, deal with that, be kind to yourself. If you need therapy, or you need to take medication for your mental health, then I'm all for that. But also, I think, if you can find a way like we're trying to do to help other people, then, it kind of gives some purpose to it, because, it doesn't just go away. It's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a comment in here from Jim. He says, so many men will say if she didn't like it, she would leave. I've heard that before. We know that's not true, he says. Would you share your reasons for staying in these types of relationships as long as you did? Please know I'm very sorry all this happened to you, and praise God you survived. So...
thank you.
Yeah, what would you say were your kind of reasons? I know you touched on them some. Part of it was COVID, and part of it was just trying to rationalize that this person you'd been with wasn't acting like that in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what other reasons you think contributed?
I think if we look at all three very quickly, I think the first one, I was very naive. I was very young. You know, as I said, the first person I'd ever been with intimately, and it didn't happen straight away. And then, you know, I kind of didn't understand what's happening. I remember the first time he slapped me, thinking, "What's?" I actually told my mum. I said, "Mum, he slapped me," and my mum, and I'm not, no way am I saying that my mum said the wrong thing, but she said, well, you know, if it happens again, you definitely need to get out. And I completely understand why she said that. And she's been through her own abuse, I now know. So I think that one was young and naive. And, you know, I did eventually get him deported, which I think is quite a big deal to do at the age of 20, is to get someone deported. So, you know, I did find my strength there. But yes, it was not great for probably 2 years. With the other two relationships, I guess that with the second one, I hadn't been in a relationship for a long time. I made excuses because his mother had died about 6 months before we got together, and I was well aware of that because we worked together. He was quite an emotional person, and that, in no way am I judging him for that, because he's born and bred Italian. So, you know, just a cultural thing, and I love that about him. But, you know, I knew that his mother had died in his arms, and that's awful. So, you know, and I don't wish that upon anybody, including him. But I guess I made excuses for that, because I thought, well, this is why this is happening. So, you know, I was looking up clinical papers about, you know, mental health, and, you know, he was a pilot, and I'm like, you need to see someone, because I think you've got anxiety, and you shouldn't really be flying if you've got anxiety and it's not, you know, not dealt with, etc., etc. So I kind of went into the help mode, I think, a bit much. But yeah, I mean, I did eventually leave that relationship, but and get a DVO. But I think you make excuses, and you think, oh, I can help to make them better. And look, we did go and see counsellors together. And I think that's the other thing. When they agree to go and see a counsellor or whatever together, you think, right, this can only get better.
Right.
Then we moved to the relationship, which became a marriage. The same thing. We went to counsellors together. So you think, oh, okay, well, this is going to help. And we did that all through COVID, and he went to see someone before COVID on his own, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think with that one, that was really insidious. Like, he was super nice guy. Like, someone said to me, what was the first time they ever did anything that wasn't very nice? I said, the first time was 18 to 2 years in. He said one day, someone said, you know, about how he wasn't seeing his children, and should he go and grab the kids, and he's like, well, no, you can't kidnap the children of their mother, and which is true. And he got really angry later once that particular person had left, and he said, you know, just sort of said it out loud, not to my face, oh, you're all assholes. So it wasn't even directed at me. It was kind of like having a go at the world. You're all assholes. I'm not able to see my children. That was the first time that anything remotely nasty had ever been said to me. So, you know, to have got that far through a relationship without having a really bad argument or whatever was like, you know, and then it just got slowly worse and worse. But there was a point where he, you know, the children disappeared, and he hasn't seen his children now since the end of 2017. His children don't have anything to do with him. In fact, they contacted me as soon as we broke up. So, you know, and I'm not going to try and cause any issues there, but they want me in their life. They don't want him in their life. So, according to them, I'm still their stepmom, and their mum considers me still their stepmom too, and that's great. But I guess, yes, COVID happened. So, as I said, you know, honestly, the number of times I packed all my belongings into 2 suitcases and walked out of our apartment building in Southampton in the UK. And then, you know, like, oh, what am I doing? Like, where am I going to go? I had no money because I was earning very little money in the UK. I was on a spouse visa. So I could only stay in the UK under my spouse visas, which means I'm attached to him. And I guess the other point to this, actually telling my mother that was in another abusive relationship, and she absolutely loved Gary, as anyone did that didn't know what was going on, was really hard, because it's like, as you've pointed out, I'm well educated, and I consider myself to be semi-intelligent, strong person in everybody's eyes, to actually go, hey, guess what? I'm in my third abusive relationship, and it's with the person after the last one. It is something that makes it hard, and that's one of the reasons I'm speaking out at the moment, is like, I'm not going to be embarrassed about this anymore.
Right.
But I've got friends that are captains for Qantas, high court judges in New Zealand. They've been through this, so it's the same kind of thing. I think it is really hard when you're in a position where people think she would never let that happen to her,
Right.
and it happens to you. But of course, it's not me that caused it; it's them.
Right.
But yeah, so but COVID was a big one. And then moving to Singapore, I had in my mind, maybe things will be better because we'll be away from his mother. So his mother and him definitely have, as they call it, emotional incest type relationship, where she controls his life. She still controls his life completely. And she's always hated every single partner he's ever had. So it's quite a bizarre situation in terms of the control she has over his life. So I thought, well, we're leaving the UK. She's in the UK. Maybe it'll be better in Singapore, but it actually got worse. So as soon as we got to Singapore, I started looking for somewhere else to live. And he didn't realize that I was doing that, because I was like, I might go cat sitting or dog sitting, or and he's like, oh yeah, if you want to, because he's quite happy for me to go away, because then he could, go and sleep with prostitutes, which is what he was doing, and watch football and play golf. So he was more than happy for me to do that. And so I was off doing that. And then I'm like, do you think maybe we should live separately, because we haven't been getting on? And, so as much as we were still married, I spent a whole year working out, where am I going to go? Where am I going to live?
Right.
I hadn't started a job. I didn't start a job in Singapore for 6 months. So I didn't have any money. So I had to sort of work out how I was going to do all of this and then leave, which is what I did. So sometimes, unfortunately, it's a financial situation, or in my case, I'm somewhere that I've never lived in my life. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do? What resources are out there to help me? So, yeah, sometimes it's a bit of the big unknown about where you're at. So if I'd been, living in Dunedin in New Zealand, where my mum lives, it would be a whole different kettle of fish. I can see what would have happened the first time it got really nasty. I would have left and gone to stay with my mum. But I didn't have that, and I didn't have any friends in Singapore to do that with. So yeah, that's part of it. But yeah, a lot of it is making excuses, and as you've pointed out, and I've written this down, Tara, rationalising and justifying.
Yes. How do you think, did any shame or self-judgment show up in the course of, especially the last relationship, because of where you had been before in the past?
No, it's a funny one. I think that's one of the things that also affected how he felt about me, was my resilience, and the fact that he couldn't affect my self-esteem. And and so when I came out of the relationship and let my family know, and all my friends, I was very open about it. In fact, I was so open about it that I had my cousin and another ex-student friend actually say, do you think you should put all that stuff up on Facebook? And I thought, yeah, I do, because why should I pretend this didn't happen? And I wasn't naming him or anything, because he never let me be on his Facebook. So there's a red flag for you. I was never his friend on Facebook. So, yes, they knew who I was talking about, but most of them had never met him because, a lot of these people were from where I lived in different parts of Australia. But yeah, and that probably hurt me the most when I came out of it, is people going, "Oh, I wouldn't be putting any of that up on Facebook." No, I'm not going to be ashamed about this. And I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. I'm not protecting him. And I think the more we talk about it, the more other people will come to the forefront and say, "Oh, this has happened to me," or "This is happening to me," or etc. So no, I've never felt ashamed of it, and I guess, as I was saying to yourself and Amanda before this started, like I've told all my colleagues now at work, my
Mhm.
boss, who's slightly older than me, so in the 60s, my younger colleagues, all these young pilots in their 30s, they all know. And I've never, I think what we were saying, like especially the younger generation, they don't kind of judge it. They don't go, "Oh, well, how embarrassing, you've been something 3 times." So, but yeah, if I came up against someone that said that, like, "How could you have been in that 3 times?" I'm not to blame here.
That's right.
It's not my fault.
Mm-mm.
It happens. And, in some ways, I sometimes think, well, I prefer that it had happened to me than to someone who wasn't perhaps as resilient in
Mhm.
terms of they could have been doing it to somebody else.
Mhm.
So, I guess yeah, there's nothing to be ashamed of. But I understand that people would feel that way. I
Mhm.
do understand that. And I can see how it would have huge implications on how you feel about yourself as a human being.
Right.
But I guess I've been fortunate and I guess that probably comes back to my friends, my family, my colleagues. So the type of support that you get. Like I've never had anyone in my family go, "Oh my God, how could you let that happen 3 times?" But yeah, if someone did, that would floor me. Like if my dad turned around and said, "How could you let that happen 3 times?" That would hurt. That would really hurt.
Mhm. Yeah,
I think it's
unfortunately, there are victims who endure that, and it's really
yes,
sad.
very.
When you have the support and like I would say right off the bat, from an advocate point of view, you kind of ripe because they do like you said, they do like stronger women, especially narcissistic
Yes,
types. But at the same time, you were in a place where you were already isolated. So that made it
correct.
even more desirable to have someone like you because they didn't have to go through the work of trying to isolate you and control you in that manner. They
Yes,
had that. So
yes.
yeah, absolutely. It's sad. Um, because they have a certain type.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And when I look at my ex-husband's previous partner, so the mother of his children, who of course was crazy and I should stay away from, and now we are quite good friends. She's a very, very strong human being and she's incredibly intelligent. And,
Mhm.
she's one of the top dot painting artists in Australia. And, and I just think, and he broke her to a point because it's a lot harder to deal with when you've got children with a person like that because you're stuck dealing with them. But I look at her and think, yeah, despite how he's affected her mentally, and he has, um, I can see why he was attracted to her because it was like, right, well, I'm with this really strong, beautiful woman, and she's an amazing Aboriginal artist, and blah blah blah. So yeah, he definitely likes to put himself with strong woman, and he would say that, so some of the women that he absolutely revered was, Queen Elizabeth II, and Margaret Thatcher. And so, he just loves strong woman. His mother, as much as she's a narcissist, is a very strong individual. So, they say that, and that sounds really, oh yeah, that's great, really, but that's how they kind of use you to boost their ego and make them look good. And yeah, so
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Yes. So, what are you doing now for like your own like self-care and healing? I know you had said something about that you were on some anxiety meds, but what else do you
Yes.
do just for yourself?
So after I left my marriage, I was fortunate enough to meet a really good group of fellow Kiwis in Singapore, and that was great. And I had some really, really good friends that would just let me talk, and I would talk and talk and talk and talk about it. And I did some therapy. So they just started up domestic violence free therapy. I don't want to call it a hotline, but you could get counselling, and it wasn't actually for expats, but they were trialing it, and I happened to contact them like, well, normally, but hey, no, we'll let you join. So that was good. So I got some free therapy because I didn't have any money. I hadn't started working at that point, and then when I came back to Australia, I've used EAP, so Employee Assistance Program. So all companies pretty much have employee assistance programs, so you get free counselling. So I've used that on and off, and I've just started using that again in the company I now work for, because I just think it's important. I still talk about it a lot. So my sister was up for New Year from Melbourne, and I talked about it a lot, and I kept thinking, oh, stop talking about it. It's like 3 years ago. And I said that to her, and she said, no, you need to talk about it. Don't worry about it. So I think that's really important. But doing things like this, and I guess just looking after myself physically, like I do a lot of exercise, which I always did, and just looking into things and trying to get a bit more of an understanding of things. So and I'm not saying that everyone should do this, because I know there are positives and negatives in this, but I have used ChatGPT a lot, where I've just been, driving to work. So I drive a 45-minute drive for me to work, and I'm like, oh, I remember when that happened. And then I'll talk to ChatGPT about it and just get a bit more of a perspective on it and go, oh, yeah, no, that makes more sense. And there is a part of me going, gosh, I wish I'd had that back in the day, because I think that would have helped me a bit. But obviously, we need to preempt that.
It's an alternative, that you can use.
Yeah, it is. It is when you're getting clarity. Yeah, clarity in my own head. But I still think about things all the time, because there are so many different things that happen, and things that I've clocked and gone, oh, that's what was actually happening there. Or that's what he was doing there. Or that's when he must have been cheating there. And so, and part of me was sort of thinking, oh, is this bad to sort of keep talking about it or keep thinking about it? But the psychologist I'm talking at the moment, it's like, no, it's not a bad thing at all, because I'm not going, I'm not ruminating or getting upset with myself. I'm just kind of putting it into different boxes in my brain. This is what happened there. This is what happened here.
Speaking your truth and putting in a perspective of this happened. It has shaped my life, but this is what I'm doing with it. Right?
Yes. Yeah. And look, for the first time in my life, I have very firm boundaries. I thought I had boundaries before I met my husband, but I didn't. So now I absolutely do. And I'm kind of like, if there's any shame, Tara, there's shame that I'm going, how did it take me to 54 years old to get boundaries? But I think that's actually, it's quite common apparently. It's like, now I really know what my boundaries are. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I tell people all the time, being in my 50s is great because, number one, I don't care. And number two,
we don't. Yeah.
I've lived enough to know what I want, what I don't want, and how to establish those kind of boundaries in my life. So for me, 50s is great.
Absolutely.
It's a big awakening as a woman to be in my 50s. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely. So I just want to, if there's any of the comments you want to mention about Roberta, that kind of thing, I just wanted to address. It definitely happens in families. That's why it's generational, picking someone similar to your father who may have been abusive. And that doesn't make you unique, unfortunately. But at the same time, there's other people out there who totally get it and understand. We pick what we have seen a lot of times. So you're not alone in that. And we thank you, Juanita, for being here. Definitely keep talking about it for sure. Um, and I agree. They are Oscar winners. Narcissists are
Oh,
definitely
yes.
Oscar winners in their performance. So absolutely, we're glad y'all walked away. And Jim says boundaries in a baseball bat. Every woman needs them.
Totally agree, Jim. We don't play baseball over here, softball bat.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, there's a lot of softball played here too. So yes, absolutely. So just a final question: if 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 we could dismantle just one belief about domestic violence today, what do you think would make the biggest difference for survivors?
That that everyone out there, so the general public, so people that haven't actually experienced and have experienced, understand that it doesn't discriminate. And yeah, it can be very insidious, that you don't know that, because it doesn't, of course it doesn't happen on the first date, it doesn't happen in the first couple of months, because if it did, and you don't have the emotional connection that you have 18 months in, well, you wouldn't stay. So
Right.
yeah, they can be great actors, and then then the mask falls. So yeah, I think it's understanding that it can happen to absolutely anyone. As I said before, I know female captains for Qantas, Virgin, High Court judges that it's happened to. It really doesn't discriminate. And then I've got friends that are, factory workers that it happens to. So,
Mhm.
it can happen to anyone. But yeah, but it's not our fault. We didn't do it. We don't ask for it. And I think
Certainly
it's
don't deserve it. No. Mm-mm.
no, and I think it's really important to talk about it and speak up about it, because it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. So, in conclusion, if there's one thing I hope you take away from the conversation we had today, it's definitely this: abuse doesn't measure someone's strength. Survival is not failure in your intelligence or who you are as a person. And being harmed does not mean you missed something that was obvious. Domestic
Yes.
violence is about control. It's not about character. And the sooner we let go of those myths and um, the myths about those who abuse and and those it happens to, the sooner survivors can stop feeling they have to prove that they deserve to be believed. So, thank you, Fenella, for sharing your truth and your
Thank
insight.
you.
Yeah, and your resilience. It was so lovely having you here. And thank you to every survivor listening. Just a few quick announcements before we close out here. If you need support, of course, our BTS ADV support line is open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And the number is in the comments and in the description. That's 1-855-BTS-1777. You can find a supportive ear there and resources. We're not a hotline. We're not for crisis, but we are there to help you if you need resources or just someone who can listen. Our Survivor to Survivor segment airs every Friday. So please watch out for that. And if you have any questions that you would like me to answer as one survivor to another, please feel free to drop your questions in an email at podcast@breakthesilencedv.org, and we will keep you anonymous. Also, check out our TikTok, our NARC Diaries. We'll have a new NARC Diaries drop tonight and on Sunday over on TikTok, where we talk about the worst things your narcissist ever said to you. And some of that is mind blowing. So definitely check that out. And of course, we always need support here we're going into a new year, so your donations help continue our programs and our work, keep our support line going, things like that. So another way you can support us is we do have a store over on our website, and we're going to play a little short segment about our store as we close out. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time on Through the Eyes of Survivors.
Thanks, everyone.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Through the Eyes of Survivors. We wanted to pause for a moment and let you know that Through the Eyes of Survivors has a shop now open. And this is a great way for you to not only help survivors of domestic violence, but also let everyone know that you will not be silent about this important cause. From t-shirts to bags to coffee mugs, we have so much to choose from. To grab your swag, head to our store at breakthesilencedv.org. That's store.breakthesilencedv.org. We can't say enough about how much we appreciate all that the community does to help support us and this organization. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode and continue to subscribe to future episodes. Thank you.